Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Haley and we're continuing to talk about the 24th shadow of addiction. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend watching that since this is picking up where we left off in that video. And where we left off in that video, just a brief reminder, is how suffering in all of its pervasive forms has a single purpose, and that is to eventually trigger your awakening. Now, me reading that or reminding you of that might, ironically enough, trigger you, which, again, is for the purpose of your awakening. So I know that's not something we all want to hear, but yes, suffering indeed does have a purpose. And on the bright side, it is not in vain that we suffer mentally, emotionally, or physically. So then he takes us on a little bit of a dissertation about desire, since, of course, naturally, we can observe that desire and addiction are linked, right? Addiction is, I have a desire, I want to engage with it, and I can't seem to stop engaging with it over and over and over again, creating this cyclical downpour of low vibration. So desires are emanating from the astral body, which is the emotional body. And desires in and of themselves are emotional, right? Just think about the sexual desire you have to be with a certain person, or the innate drive you have to eat that thing that is sweet. There's usually always an emotional basis to every single desire, and just because you maybe can't identify what the emotional cause or drive is doesn't mean that there isn't one. So this is something interesting to contemplate. All of my addictions have an emotional foundation. All of them. Every single sexual fantasy, every single craving for a certain food or drink, every single deep want to experience whatever it is, a job, a different culture, a travel experience, all of these have an emotional basis. And so this is something that, of course, you can sit and contemplate for hours and hours and days and days and years. Why is it that I'm addicted to what I'm addicted to? Why is it that I desire what I desire? So that's a very fun contemplation if you have some time. So the physical body has essential needs, right? The survival needs: food, warmth, shelter, water, sex. Whereas the astral, the emotional body, has cravings. So cravings, wants, desires are different than true survival-based needs. They're inessential to survival. So for example, I can have a desire or a craving for a glass of wine. Now, whether or not I fulfill that desire and drink the glass of wine will not affect the fact of my survival. I will survive whether I drink the glass of wine or not. Whereas a survival-based need, which is linked to the physical body, needs to be prevalent, otherwise the individual will cease to exist on this physical 3D earth, right? For instance, shelter is a survival-based physical need. I quite literally need shelter, or over time, I'm in Germany currently, so the snow and the weather will start to degrade my body and I will cease to exist. So there is a difference here. And this might sound ridiculous if you're like, yeah, duh, there's a difference. But believe it or not, some people don't know this. Some people are not aware consciously that if they don't engage with their addiction, they will survive. An example of that would be, an extreme example of that would be a meth head, right? They quite literally believe if they do not get the next hit of meth, I don't know if that's the proper terminology, I've never done meth, but they genuinely believe if they don't engage with the meth that they will die. Or they will start to have thoughts come up that would make them believe they'd rather die than not get this next hit. And so this is so interesting, right? Because once again, these cravings, these desires, and these wants that are emanating from the astral emotional body are not actually pinnacle to survival. However, our energy, our emotions trick us into thinking that they are. And this is the energy that drives the body forward to, at all costs, fulfill the desire. The primal wound is our perceived separation from the totality. That's one way to say it. So this is just kind of a glittery, spiritual, poetic way to say we all navigate the world as perceived separate selves and egos. And this is the real cause of all of the suffering, that we are not aware that we are total, that we are one. And it's because of this core misperception that all suffering arises. This is what his claim is. And because of this perceived separation, he claims that this is why the astral emotional body responds to this wound, to this lack, to this misperception of reality through creating and acting on desire. Let's break that down a bit. Let's say you are addicted to chocolate. Okay, this is a very simple one, not something as extreme as meth. Although, of course, every desire and addiction at its core is extreme to the individual. So let's just paint a scenario. The individual is addicted to chocolate. Now again, addiction, the hallmark of addiction would be if I put chocolate in front of you, you actually cannot control yourself and you have to eat it. The person who's addicted cannot witness the desire in front of them and not engage and not reach for it. And then inversely, someone who likes chocolate doesn't necessarily mean they're addicted, right? I can put chocolate in front of you and you can either choose to have it or choose not to have it. It's not something that completely takes over your mind and your senses and your attention and your energy. So this is how you know if you're addicted or not. We'll just start with that. But yes, let's say the individual is addicted to chocolate, meaning when I put it in front of them, they cannot control themselves. They have to have it. And if it's not in front of them, they have to find it. It's driving their whole mental energy, all of their attention, and they're on the hunt to fulfill this addiction, to satiate this desire. So how this ropes back to his claim, which is the primal wound is our perceived separation from the totality, is this person, again, perhaps subconsciously, does believe that once they fulfill their desire, once they eat some chocolate, they will feel better. They will feel more whole. It will actually close the gap of this perceived separation from the totality and bring about peace and alleviate suffering. And then, of course, okay, for a second they're satiated. And then for some people, 10 minutes later, they start craving it again. Some people, it's a few hours or a day. Others, it's a week. But nonetheless, one thing that is certain is that the addiction always comes back around and asks for more. So once again, returning to this perceived state of separation, engaging in the addiction for a moment or 3 or 4, feeling whole, feeling satiated, feeling peaceful, and then that's wearing off, feeling separate, feeling suffering, hence recreating this cycle of addiction. So it's funny because when I first read his claim, the primal wound is our perceived separation from the totality, I was like, okay, dude, whatever. But then actually, as I kept reading and I contemplated what desire really is, I was like, actually, that's a pretty fair point. Every time I engage in something that I desire or I'm addicted to, it ultimately is because fundamentally I believe it will make me feel better. It will alleviate suffering. And just because that's not a conscious realization as I enact with the desire, again, doesn't mean that it's not true. So here's a perfect opportunity. You who's watching, what are you addicted to? Or what do you heavily desire? What takes a lot of your mental energy and draws your attention completely? And brainstorm this out and then carrying on. All of those desires that you have just brainstormed, amongst all the desires that maybe do not pertain to you, are really rooted in a single desire, he says. And it's the desire to escape suffering caused by the primal wound and return to the pure state of unity, which is what I just went over. Okay, so that's great. I get it, Richard Rudd. All desires are trying to alleviate the sense of separation, bring about wholeness, so I feel peace, alleviate suffering. Okay, now what? Like, what do I do with this information? Well, he says it right here. He says, if it's a contingency, if you could look deeply enough into the desire without acting on it, it would actually burn itself out, which is the underlying purpose of meditation. Look, don't touch. If you could look deeply enough into the desire without acting on it. So what does that translate to in real life? We talked about this very briefly in the last video. It's about experiencing the gap of discomfort a person feels when they feel the addiction, the desire rising, and they're choosing not to engage. So going back to our chocolate example, a perfect example to look deep into the desire without acting on it would be sitting here as the chocolate bar is presented to you. Instead of reaching for it, you watch all the thoughts. Oh, I want that. Oh, I like that. Da-da-da. Oh, you can't have it. Oh, you can have it. Da-da-da. And never reaching to engage with it. So, of course, it's extremely uncomfortable. Lots and lots of thoughts will surface. And he's saying eventually it will burn itself out. So, eventually. It does not guarantee that this uncomfortable feeling or gap will only last a minute. Eventually, it could last hours. It could last a few minutes. It could last a few seconds. It could last a decade. You never know. But eventually, the desire will of its own accord alleviate itself once it finally gives in. And this is what meditation is, right? A very simple example that we can all relate to, whether we'd like to admit it or not, is that we are all addicted to our thoughts. And the purpose of meditation is you sit yourself down, you watch your thoughts. Every time you realize you're engaging, you're reaching for, you come back to the place of the observer and you look deeply into what's happening without acting, without engaging, without entangling. And eventually it burns itself out. Eventually you reach the peaceful oneness void of meditation. The whole thing is the meditation, though. I just want to emphasize that. And for some people, and it doesn't even have to do with if you're an experienced meditator or not. Some people, you can sit down and literally 2 minutes later, you can have a sense of peace and your thoughts have left. And it's not an issue to sit there. And then other days, same person, it can take 2 hours of entangling, disentangling before you get to this eventual liberation of energy and find peace into the meditation. So it's different every day for every single person all the time. And isn't that fun? So yeah, really paying attention to the fact that it's contingent if you can look deeply enough, if you can observe. Then and only then is there this promise of eventual liberation. So that is how desire pertains to the astral emotional body. And then he takes us a step further. How does desire entangle with the mental body? Well, it's the mind. The mind reacts to the desires of the astral body and tries to think its way out of suffering. Have you ever done that? Tried to think your way out of a problem that's occurring in your life over and over and over again? It could even be you thinking a way to get that which you are addicted to, whether it's the meth or the chocolate or the wine. How can I get it? Oh, I can get it like this. Oh, I could call this person. Or I could... It's all happening in the mind, in the mental body. Because the mind functions across time, its main tendency is to base the hope of happiness on the future, rather than accepting the real conditions of the present moment. So, when we find that we are not able to engage in our addiction right now because the wine is not present, the chocolate's not present, the meth is not present, the mind starts to, use itself to calculate and predict when in the future, how, when can it get this thing? Can it satiate this desire? Instead of really waking up, being here now and realizing it's not here, I feel uncomfortable, let me observe this discomfort, which would be sitting in the gap, which would be a form of engaging with that beautiful contingency we just talked about in order to alleviate the actual suffering, the actual root. But once again, the mind would so much rather use itself into a maze rather than really get present and just observe the discomfort coursing through the body. And so actually it's important here, and this will be the second contemplation. What physical signs does your body give you when you attempt to sit into the seat of the observer, whether it's with your eyes open or closed, right? This doesn't have to look like typical meditation. So for example, let's say you become aware that you have a desire and you want to satiate it, and it's obviously not currently here. You become aware of that, I'm engaging in the mind. Let me get back to being here. The best way to get back to being here is to really feel material. I like to look at the way light bounces off of things, like this pen. Use a sense to help yourself ground into the present moment, and then become aware, what is my body doing? Sometimes, like for me, for instance, I will notice my stomach is contracted if I'm feeling uncomfortable, or if I'm feeling like I want something that I can't currently have or satiate. So contracting of the stomach, some people's eyebrows will furrow or their face will become tense. Some people's breath will become shallow. And again, it's becoming aware of these and then relaxing into these sensations. So relaxing into the contraction of the stomach naturally decontracts. Is that a word, decontracts? And then naturally becoming aware of the tense face. You have the choice now to untensify your face. I don't know if that's a word either. And then you notice the shallow breath. Again, you become aware that you have the option to breathe deeply now. And this is the way you work through the gap. You alleviate the discomfort. The discomfort is quite literally manifesting in your body as a form of stress or tension. And you, the experiencer, can help this process along by becoming aware of that where tension is stored and actively sinking into it, rather than engaging in the mind. How do I get this thing that I want right now? Or actually engaging with the whatever it is. And unfortunately, the society we live in makes money off of consumerism and fulfilling desires and promoting addictions. So yeah, this is not necessarily something that is easy to transcend, because all of the ads and the propaganda and the TV is, as he says, designed by the shadow for the shadow. Right? It's designed by the shadow of addiction for the shadow of addiction. And I really like that line in here because it's such a great tagline that really summarizes this whole shadow frequency of addiction. So there has to be a deeper desire, ironically enough, to transcend the addictions and desires that don't serve you in order to step into that next level of loving reality. It's not easy to transcend the shadow of addiction, because every single place you look, every single ad, TV, reality TV show, movie, you go out in public, get a coffee, everywhere we're always constantly being stimulated with this idea of consumerism, more, and you should feel your addiction because it feels good. So there needs to be a really strong, no, I want to overcome this in order to overcome it. And then he says a nice truth here. He says, nothing external can bring an end to your suffering. And if you who's watching this has ever engaged in any spiritual text, podcast, book, whatever, you've heard something along these lines like, oh, it's all within. All the answers are inside of you. Nothing external can end your suffering. This concept of projection revolves around this truth as well. And this is true. Nothing external can bring an end to your suffering. But as I say this, of course, conceptually, I can understand this truth. But truly understanding a truth on a body-mind level is completely different than only being like, yeah, conceptually, I totally understand that nothing outside of me can end my suffering. Yeah, like I get it. But then let me show that I get it through my action. And this is where the real work lies. So I think it's very beneficial, and it's almost like a doorway when we read things or listen to information or learn about these concepts. But then the real work is in the applied action, right? How can I live this truth? How can I live with the gnosis that nothing external can bring an end to my suffering? Like, really ask yourself that. How can I put this into action, put this into practice? Well, maybe it's as simple as tomorrow when you wake up, usually the first thing you do is make a cup of coffee or two. You can remind yourself, this coffee I want, I like, I do every day, but it will not bring an end to my suffering. So how about today I just try a social experiment where I skip my coffee? Again, with the devotion and the dedication and the awareness that this coffee, which is something external of me, is actually not going to alleviate my internal suffering. And of course, the degree to which you play around with acting this truth out is up to you. And there is a fine line, right? The goal here is not to always avoid all of our desires. We're human, we have them, and that's okay. But the goal is to become balanced with our desires, really have autonomy. I choose when to engage with drinking coffee. It's not just because 8 a.m. goes off, I'm unconsciously reaching for a cup of coffee every single 8 a.m., 8 a.m., 8 a.m., because now my desires are controlling me. So how do I engage with my desires in a way where it's I am choosing to do this thing? I am aware of what I'm doing. It's not like I'm unconsciously 8 a.m. every 8 a.m. sipping coffee. So bringing awareness to when you engage in your desire is another beautiful way to put this truth into practice. Nothing external can bring an end to my suffering. So if you don't want to forego your coffee tomorrow morning, then try this activity instead. How consciously can I drink my cup of coffee? Can I grind the beans, smell it, put it into the French press, pour the water? As the 4 minutes, as it's steeping, I mix it and I watch all the particles swim around and then settle at the bottom. I pour it, smelling it, taking the first sip. So how consciously can I engage with my desire? And this is also a nice form of gratitude in action as well. So up to you. You can practice this truth in many more ways than I just brainstormed for you as well, of course, too. So it's only when you turn inward that you can finally face the addictive quality of your own mind. Only when you enter a flow state, like that which I just described, or meditate. Addiction is the constant replaying of the same perceptive frame with no pause between frames. And this is what happens at a synaptic level as well. Reenacting the same scenarios over and over without realizing what we are doing. With no pause. That's the key words in that sentence. Meaning, inversely, if I invite pause, if I practice pause, if I practice becoming aware I'm about to take the first sip before I take the first sip, and then take the first sip with awareness and gratitude and love and presence, well, now I'm actually going within. I'm actually experiencing the cup of coffee. And we'll talk about more about cultivating a pause in the gift frequency chapter of Invention, of course. But I think it's so interesting that in all of these shadow frequency chapters, if you read closely enough between the lines, you can see things like this, with no pause. Oh, so that would mean if I did invite a pause, the result would be different. And reading with this kind of secret lens to see the secret clues is one of my favorite things to do, and which is why I make these videos as well. And also, if you who's watching this is also listening or reading to the Gene Keys, I would be so interested to see what your secret little goggles detect. So please share below, because that is the beautiful thing about different minds and different perspectives and different awareness levels, is we all see different things and all read into different things, right? I read between the lines in this sentence, and maybe you derive another truth or inverse truth from a different part of the text. And it's in sharing these that we can make this text even bigger than it is, even more helpful than it already is. So how do you escape the wheel of addiction and reset the program? The full answer, once again, we will delve into the 24 Gith, but in a nutshell, he says, the very realization that you are in an addictive pattern begins to shift the programming. What a relief. The first step into the doorway of the gift frequency is the willingness to identify, I am addicted to chocolate. Damn it. Right? The willingness to confront that which has no pause currently starts to naturally, of its own accord, create pause, create room for change, and create this liberation of suffering. It's now no longer an unconscious pattern. Now, even every time I eat chocolate, at some point, even if it's after I've already engaged with the addiction, I will remember, oh yeah, I'm addicted to this thing. I need to work on that. Or there'll be some form of awareness surfacing. And this is the first step, he says. This is the start of the disentangling from the mental and astral bodies, which is a woo-woo way to say what I just said. Okay, so really quickly, we'll go over the repressive and the reactive natures of addiction. The repressive nature is frozen. So when you come across a gap, remember a gap is the lack of stimulation or this discomfort arising in you and the itch to engage with the addiction. So when you come across a natural gap in your awareness, the fear that that gap brings, the discomfort, I don't want to be here, or I need to distract myself, causes the person to freeze. And he says that this freezing manifests in many ways, some as a complete lack of energy, feeling drained, feeling emotionally depressed, feeling mentally narrow-minded. The secret to all addiction lies in how we respond to the gaps. And the danger of addiction is that we seal our fate in these precious moments, right? Every time we feel that gap and we freeze, and then we choose to engage in the addiction, we're passing up a beautiful opportunity to liberate suffering. Gaps are precious opportunities to ascend. And remember, this is where I'd left us off in our last video, that these addictions' single purpose is to eventually trigger your awakening. It's true. So again, these people that are enacting the repressive nature of addiction, frozen, are either shrinking or reacting to that which they desire. right? They shrink and then they choose to just, fuck it, I'll just engage. But can you sit with this gap? And then similar but different is the reactive nature of anxiousness. And this person is unwilling to fully experience their feeling of emptiness. These gaps are very, very short because this person is panicked, frenetic, always engaged in something because distraction is their best friend. They're reacting actively instead of passively out of anxiety, and they're falling into the bottomless pit where they're translating fear into anxiety. So this is your classic addict, right? The repressed nature are those who numb themselves, right? They engage in the addiction so they don't have to feel anything. And this reactive nature is usually the person engaging with stimulants, things that cause them to feel more, experience more. So this is your drugs for the most part, and sex, workaholic, gambling, stuff like this. Whereas the repressive nature, a more obvious example might be an alcoholic. So these reactive, anxious type people cannot sit still, and they are flooded with the anxiety that comes from avoiding the powerful and absolutely natural chemical process that is taking place inside of them. Another way to say that is that gaps are absolutely natural. And we as a society have forgotten that gaps are absolutely natural, that it's absolutely okay to do nothing, to be, to meditate, to observe. And we have subconsciously programmed ourselves and our societies to think that no stimulation or no scrolling or no doing or no working is useless, worthless, and it's bad. And this is just simply not true. And so the reactive nature 100% subscribes to this ideal as well, and they see doing as the only form of worth, engaging as the only form of worth, which is why they tend to do so excessively. But yes, stay tuned for the 24th gift of invention, where we will more in depth go over how to extend these gaps, sit in the discomfort, observe the urge to react to the addiction so that we can elevate into the gift frequency of invention. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another Gene Keys video with me. If you're interested in working one-on-one together, feel free to email me. It's in the description box below. We can work together on reading your Gene Keys, which I just started doing for people, which is really exciting. I also offer one-to-one coaching where we can meet together to work through insecurities, blockages that you have, and just really stepping into the best, brightest version of yourself. So I look forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.